As someone who's constantly on the go, whether it's giving talks, traveling, or chasing grandkids, comfortable shoes are a must. That's why I'm loving my Born shoes this fall. Right now, I've been wearing the Siggy leather platform loafers. They're stylish enough for dinner out, but comfy enough for long days on my feet. Born uses top quality leather and real craftsmanship. You can feel it the moment you step into a pair. What makes them different is how supportive and lightweight they are. You're not trading style for comfort, you're getting both. Whether I'm traveling or heading to the farmer's market, I can count on these to get me through the day. Take comfort in Born shoes because looking good should mean sore feet. Go to bornshoes.com today for 15% off plus free ground shipping on all full-price shoes when you use my code Dr. Meg. That's code Dr. Meg at bornshoes.com. When it comes to dinner at my house, simple and healthy is the name of the game. But between work, family, and everything else going on, it's hard to find time to plan meals, let alone cook something everyone actually likes. That's why I'm such a big fan of Hungry Root. They don't just deliver groceries. They fill your cart for you based on what your family loves to eat. Last week, I made their creamy butternut squash pasta, and it was ready in under 15 minutes. It tasted homemade, but without all the effort. What I appreciate most is that Hungry Root learns what we like and helps me stick to my health goals without ever stepping foot in a grocery store. Right now, you can get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg and use code Dr. Meg. That's hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg. Code Dr. Meg. This episode is brought to you in partnership with Todd Sarner. We received sponsorship for this interview, and as always, all opinions are our own.
On today's episode of Parenting Great Kids,
we've all been there. Power struggles with our kids, endless meltdowns, feeling like nothing we try is working. But what if those difficult moments like the defiance, the shutdowns, the big emotions are actually signal? What if they're your child's way of saying, something deeper isn't working for me right now? Joining us today is Todd Sarner, a psychotherapist and parenting coach with over 20 years of experience helping families move from chaos to connection. He's the founder of Transformative Parenting and the author of the upcoming book, The Calm and Connected Parent. Todd, this is going to be so much fun. Welcome to Parenting Great Kids.
We talked for hours before we hit record.
I think we did. And then finally I said, okay, we just need to hit the record button. I love your work. I love your whole approach to parenting, because I think so many times parenting coaches and experts get things backwards. We come in and we tell parents what to do rather than learning why our kids are doing what they're doing. Because if you understand that, you are launched on a very, very different trajectory. So you have worked for many years with parents, and you talk a lot about attachment first philosophy rather than behavior first models. Tell me what the difference is.
I guess one of my core beliefs is that parenting is not supposed to be what you do to your child to make them stop doing what they're doing. That's just a reactive model. And I feel like that sets parents up for never-ending, what I call whack-a-mole parenting. Like the old whack-a-mole game. Like this symptom shows up, and you try to come up with a 3-step method to make that stop, and then another thing pops up, and then your other kid starts doing right. I just believe that most of parenting is meant to be proactive. It's meant to be what you do to create an environment and a relationship with your kids that prevents most of the problems from happening in the first place. But then if the problems do happen, they're really much more in line with what you're saying, Meg, is that they're signals usually of something my child just doesn't know how to do yet, And almost all behavior is a perfectly logical outcome of my kids' sensitivity, their age, their brain development, and what's going on around them. And if I have the attitude that as a parent, I'm just supposed to find the problem and then do something to make it stop, that, like I said, is never ending. But if I see it as, hey, what my child is doing right now is that logical outcome of those things I mentioned, well, then, yeah, I become more of an investigator, like, ooh, what's going on here? And that attitude in itself changes everything. It changes everything about how you see it and how your child experiences you.
I love it because I think you're right. From my experience, parents who just say, no, stop it, and they figure out timeouts and how long for the timeouts and appropriate discipline, as I said, is backwards. And sometimes I'd love to hear your take on it. It seems to come from parents who are frustrated, who don't have a lot of time, or who are
no, that absolutely happens. Like, something that came up for me with your first question comes up here again is attachment first parenting, and what's the difference? You've been doing this a long time. I've listened to your work. I see what you do. I know you know this, but when you've been doing it a while, and it's been a couple decades for me, you see this pendulum happening, this pendulum swing in the household, and then you see it out in culture and in the blogs, in the this swing back and forth from gentle parenting to harsh and strict parenting. Right now, it's F around and find out parenting, which is very popular on social media. And that's not supposed to be how it is. And I find as a couples counselor and as a parent coach that usually one parent, and it's almost always the mom, is like, hey, these kids are not getting enough attention. Hey, we need to give them a little bit more of our time. And the other parent, usually the father, not always, is like, they need more discipline. They need more boundaries. We're spoiling them. And neither one is the complete answer. The complete answer is attachment comes first. My child's sense of being connected to me in the moment, which is not easy to do all the time, is what gives me the power to do everything else. Does that make sense how I'm explaining it? But attachment is also balanced out by, I do need to teach you cause and effect around your behavior, which people call consequences, even though the definition of consequences is wildly different depending on who you ask. I do need to teach my child, if this happens, this happens. If this doesn't happen, this happens. That does not need to involve me yelling or punishing you. That's just a natural teaching of cause and effect, right? But I also need to recognize when my child is frustrated and they have lots of foul feelings inside, and that I need to set limits at those times that are firm and clear, but compassionate, empathetic for what my child is going through. I don't need to punish you. But like I've heard you say before, and you're saying now, because we get busy, because we have our own issues we haven't dealt with, because I fought with my spouse this morning, I take all of that and I bring it into my relationship with my child, and it just is a never-ending kind of vicious cycle. Because if attachment is the main key,
right?
If my child's feeling connected to me in the moment is what gives me the power to do all these other things, I hope I'm tracking well with this. Well, me getting mad at them, me yelling at them, me making them feel bad for what they're doing, just take the ethics out of it, take the morality out of it. Okay, it's just not effective. It just doesn't work, And so then I'm in a cycle and I'm continuing to blame my child. So it is very important that parents do what they can to put that metaphoric oxygen mask on first. Take care of yourself. Be taking care of your relationship. And try to have a different narrative and a comprehensive narrative about what's going on, what your job is as a parent, including what you said. Understand that their behaviors are usually a signal of what's going on or what they can't do yet. And I had a great mentor Stan Tatkin in the couples counseling realm, Dr. Stan Tatkin, and he talked a lot about conflict versus deficit mentality, right? If, let's just say couples counseling, let's say us, our spouses, right? If I have an attitude that my spouse is doing something on purpose that hurts me or that doesn't meet my needs, I'm going to automatically have an antagonistic positioning. You know what I mean? I'm automatically going to be like, why aren't you meeting
Oh,
my
yeah.
needs? You know, and the gloves.
I wonder if that's
No,
a
it's
wife
both.
thing more than a husband thing,
It's
because
absolutely both. The way that
it's
men
both.
and women
Okay,
express
okay.
it, even though I don't think gender exactly this, gender exactly that, um, it's more masculine, feminine dynamics. I just think the way they express it is different. But men tend to pent it up and then blow up with like anger and control kind of stuff, where women sometimes are more expressive emotionally with it. So if I have that conflict mentality with my spouse or with my child, they are doing this on purpose, I automatically assume an antagonistic stance. That's just how people are. Just like if your spouse points the finger at you and tells you you're doing something wrong, I don't care who you are, you're going to defend yourself. You know, you just do. It's our instinct.
Right.
Well, what about if we had a deficit stance? Let's start with our spouse. What if they just don't know how to do what I want them to do? Or what if they misunderstood right? And I just have the attitude that they don't know how because maybe somebody didn't provide that for them. Maybe my spouse didn't get this from her parents and she didn't learn it. Well, then I'm going to have a different stance, right? And it's almost always the case with children. If our children feel connected to us, which they're naturally and biologically inclined to do. I worked with severely abused children in group homes and foster care for years, and every single one of them wanted to be with their parent, even if they had a horrible abuse history, right? I'm sorry to use an extreme to make the point. Our children are biologically wired to attach to us. So if we are doing the things that we need to do to kind of foster that and build an environment around us that keeps the connection there, our kids want to listen to us, right? And so if I have a deficit mindset, I go, oh, they just don't know how to do this yet. They want to. Let me help them figure out how to do it. And yes, sometimes I'm going to need to teach consequences and sometimes I'm going to need to set a limit. But that doesn't need to be punishment.
Well, and I think that, shifting the parental mindset is huge, because really what you're talking about is when kids behave badly, a lot of parents assume, well, they're a bad kid. They did that. They're trying to just antagonize me. Or parents will say, my kid is acting badly because I'm not a very good parent. And then they get mad at themselves and the kid. So it can be really kind of complicated. What about the parent who grew up in a home who didn't experience attachment, or who didn't have a good experience with his or her parents, and then they come into parenting their own kids? How do they overcome their own difficulty with attachment to form attachments with their kids?
That's a big question. And it's in a way why
It's another book.
Another
it's
book.
another
Well,
book
it's
for
actually my mentor's book. My main mentor, Dr. Gordon Neufeld, who really took me under his wing around the time my son was born, 22 and a half years ago. Famous developmental clinical psychologist, author of Hold On to Your Kids. That book really was kind of a blueprint. That was my original blueprint. You know, I've had a couple thousand clients since then and a lot of experience. And so I like to think I've made my own path here. But, he said that I'm paraphrasing, but it really stuck with me. He said that if we learn to be who our child needs to grow them up properly, we can't help but grow ourselves up in the process, right?
What a lovely,
and so that's why I call my practice transformative parenting, even though I sometimes regret it because it's a very long email address and sometimes people don't know how to spell it. But the idea was this idea of, I studied Japanese, and people have mentioned, like, there's a kanji, Japanese character for crisis, that has both the characters for danger and opportunity in it, you know? And the
Wow.
idea is, just to adapt it to your question and what you're asking, is becoming a parent, just like getting married, will bring up everything in you that you didn't get. It'll bring up everything that you don't know how to do. It'll bring it right to the surface. The danger would be to get stuck in a loop and do the same thing over and over again, just repeat what my parents did or didn't do over and over again, expecting a different result. The opportunity is, hey, it's not pleasant. It's right there in your face, but do something about it. Learn how to be who your child needs you to be. And in that, I consider it like a hero's journey, like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the call to adventure. Find some good guides, learn what your kid needs, and just concentrate on being that. Because another really deeply impactful thing that Neufeld said to me when I was a student of his early on, and I think it's in his work, is he said, parenting is more about who you are to your child than what you do. And figuring out who you need to be, which in my universe, it's be an alpha parent, meaning be a papa bear, be a mama bear, be a kind, generous leader who is leading the way, not a dictator. But know that your job is not to be a dictator, and your job is not to be your kid's best friend. Your job is to be a good, benevolent leader, And if you just keep focusing, obviously there's so many questions that could lead from that, Meg, but if you just figure out, what does my child need? Who do I need to be? And you just keep on that journey, and you're gentle with yourself. Meaning, if something comes up, so many parents want to be perfect, especially moms, in my experience. You can't be, and it wouldn't be helpful for your child if you were perfect. That wouldn't set them up well for life.
You'd be you'd be an obnoxious parent.
Yeah, but then they wouldn't be able to relate to anyone else, because they're,
Exactly.
I've heard you talk about repair with your children. Like, you're going to make mistakes. And I think the ideal situation is, your conscience telling you effed up. I shouldn't have done it that way. I feel bad. Sure. Feel that. Notice that. But then do something about it. Don't get caught in a cycle about it, because the more you're in a cycle about it, you're just beating yourself up, and you're not going to be present for your kid. So use that as like a compass. Like, oh, I wish I would have done that better. Go apologize to your kid. Don't make it about, I'm sorry, but you messed up. No, take up responsibility. Say you didn't. You did. That's not how I want it to be. I'm working on it, but let's get better. And that's kind of the rhythm you want to find. But my main thing is, you can solve your attachment issues, I truly believe, by noticing what comes up in being married and having kids, and then working on those things. Don't shove them away or ignore them. They're tough sometimes, but the only way out is through. It's working them through.
I love it. Because really what you're saying is understanding yourself and making yourself emotionally and psychologically and physically healthier. And your kid will show you what needs to change and where you've got deficits, or it's going to make you a better parent, and it's going to make your parenting so much more enjoyable. Let's talk about stress for a minute, because you talk about rhythm and consistency. A lot of the parents who are listening to us, are working full-time jobs, and they're running their kids around to all sorts of sports, and they're not spending a whole lot of time with their kids because they're just running around in the car, and kids that end up, looking at their screens. That's a different topic. But how do parents who are experiencing a lot of stress, how do they dial down enough to really do what you're talking about doing and hear what you're talking about, in order to parent better? What do they need to shift on the
There's so many
inside?
things. When I run my parents through my particular process, we try to offer a lot of different things out there, free resources, low cost ones, and then we have our intensive kind of coaching processes. I think of it as, first, you have to have a good roadmap. Most parents are working without any kind of roadmap. I'm not even telling you my roadmap. If some other roadmap makes sense to you and some other guide makes sense to you, go with it. If that fits for you. I just find that most parents don't have a roadmap. They're jumping from this philosophy to that philosophy, and that pendulum I talked about before. And I'll try a little of this week and now next week. Get a roadmap, because you're meant to have one. And so I think of a couple things. Understand that we have to build out our culture in 3 different phases in my roadmap. It's really design some things where you are focusing on attachment and connection and making sure that's in place first. That means building a culture in your home of greeting each other, making sure connection is there, and helping your children feel connected to you even when they're apart. The second realm would be build out a structure and a ritual and a predictability in your house. But that includes, kids need downtime. They need open space. They need play. And if they don't have play and they don't have downtime, they'll be filled with a whole bunch of energy that they will focus into screens, and they'll have too much energy at the end of the day. They need to get out their energy. But also in that realm, I'd say we have to teach them cause and effect. Like I said before, you're yelling in the car. I have to pull over the car. I'm not going to yell at you, but we're going to take 20 minutes to sit here until you get it out of your system. We're good. But then now what? We have 20 minutes less at the park because I had to do that. That's not a punishment. That's just what happened because I had to pull over to be safe, right? You didn't have dinner. You don't have dessert. I consider that all part of that second realm. But I also consider that realm regulation. Take care of yourself, parent, like I said before. Do that 20 minutes on the Calm app. I don't have a sponsorship with them, but it's just an easy thing. I do meditation once or twice a day for 20 minutes. I take a walk in the morning for an hour usually. It helps me regulate, helps me be centered for the day. But having also, I would say in the first 2 realms there, building out a community. Having a good community around you that you can send your kids to their house and they're going to play and they're going to have fun, or you can send your kids to my house. I found that to be one of the most valuable things for managing what you're talking about, Meg, is if I have structure and ritual and culture, and I have a good village of, at least in our case, it was 5 boys in my kids' class. We got along with all their parents. We could send our kids to each other's houses. None of us did screens at all, until at least 8th grade. And even then we didn't really do screens. And guess what? Our kids didn't complain. One of my kids' best friends was the head of IT for Google when they started in the Eastern Hemisphere. He was a tech guy, but now he was a chicken farmer. And when I sent my kid over to his house, they just played on the farm. You know what I mean? Is that kind of answering your question?
Yes, absolutely. Because my philosophy too is we actually moved to where we're living because we want our kids outside. And I see so much ADHD, and I say to parents, please have a tree somewhere in your yard so that your son can go up and down and up and down and up. And if he falls and breaks his leg, oh well. But you're absolutely right. So in your transformative parenting program style, you help parents transform those daily struggles into deeper connection. And then you use attachment science and psychology to work with parenting strategies. So it's like you have this a multifaceted model which all fits and works together. And I love that in that mix you're talking about community, which is absolutely right. I think that we'll talk about this technology and AI. So I have never had a parent come into me and say, I really would like my 10-year-old to have a phone. This is what I hear. My 10-year-old really wants a phone. I don't want her to have it, but what should I do? And I go, wait a minute. Wait, you just told me you don't want her to have it.
Yeah.
I know, but so what I encourage them to do, I don't know if they've done it, but it's exactly what you're talking about. I say, go into her classroom and find 4 or 5 friends whose parents kind of like you. And you say, okay, you're the 5 kids in the class who aren't going to have a phone, so that you create a buddy system. They don't feel like you're a crazy parent. And it also, I find that this whole sort of group mentality of getting kids together who are going in the direction that you want your kid to go is hugely important in healthy development.
Absolutely. I say the exact same thing to my parents all the time. Like, one of the main questions I get from parents is, my kid is addicted to screens and smartphones, social media. How do I put it back in the box? How do I put the Pandora back in the box? And my answer is always, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years. The best thing to do is not let it out of the box in the first place.
Exactly.
And like, the second thing is, yeah, you can do something about it, but you really have to work on it. We had the agreement. My son went to a Waldorf school in Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, California, really wonderful place that had a farm and a wildlife like protected area. It's just this amazing destination school. And every year the teacher would get us together as parents and go, we all agree we're not going to introduce kids to technology yet, right? And we all made that agreement. But I tell people all the time, if you don't have that, just do what you said and what we did. Anyway, is do form that little pod, because I am telling you, just like Dr. Meeker, is parents come to you all the time and say exactly that. I wish my kid wasn't on all these things, but everyone else is, right?
Right.
When you're me and you're seeing 5 or 6 couples a day about these things, you understand that they're all saying it, right?
Have you ever hit that wall where stress, anxiety, or even burnout just becomes too much, but finding a therapist feels impossible? I've talked to so many parents who've been there. Therapy could help, but the cost or finding someone who takes insurance makes it feel out of reach. That's why I want you to know about Rula. That's RULA. Rula is a healthcare company that's making therapy easier to get, more personalized, and actually affordable. They partner with over 100 insurance plans, so most patients pay around $15 per session. And they don't just assign you a random provider. Rula takes your needs, preferences, and goals and connects you with a licensed therapist that's the right fit for you. You can start therapy as soon as tomorrow, and Rula sticks with you every step of the way. Thousands are already using Rula to get affordable, high-quality therapy that's actually covered by insurance. Visit rula.com/Dr. Meg to get started. When you sign up, make sure to say you heard about it here. That's RULA.com/Dr. Meg, because mental health care should work with your life, not against it.
My practice started really in Mill Valley, California, Marin County, really affluent area. And I couldn't tell all my parents that their friends were coming to see me because of confidentiality things. Sometimes they knew because they sent each other to me. But I would sometimes 5 times in a week have people from the same school, the same really nice school, tell me that. I wish my kid wasn't on technology. Guys, I call it an attachment vacuum, that kids would naturally want us to be in the lead. They naturally would prefer our attention because we have more ability to fill their needs, to fill their attachment cup than their friends, than peer interaction. Friends are great. I am so blessed that, I'm so grateful that my son had the friends he had. growing up. They're amazing kids, and now they're all in their early 20s. But the people most able to fill the cup of our kids is us, right? And parents are shocked when I tell them, and then they find out that their teenager a lot of times would rather play a board game with them than go be on the phone.
Yes.
They're like, no, that can't
and
be possible. And then they do it, and they incorporate it in,
and they see it,
and it works.
And we've seen kids who sort of take a sabbatical from phones for a month, and after a month they feel so much better, and they'll tell you that. I've had kids tell me they feel bad after social media. I had a young girl actually tried to commit suicide because she was on social media so much. And I said, you've got to get off, but I can't. Yes, you can, but I can't. So a lot of what we did is just try to wean her from that. And it's so kids know. And they want someone to come along and say, you know what, not get rid of your phone. They say, this is not good for your emotional health. I tell my grandkids, it dulls your brain. But it does. But I said, reading is so much better for you. Interesting fact, and we'll just jump on because you're right. We could talk about this for 3 hours, or we need to write a book together or something. But I was driving my son back to college some years ago, and he was a sophomore in college. And he said, so Mom, what are you going to do tonight? And I said, well, I'm going to be talking to some parents. And he said, well, what are you going to say? And I said, well, what should I say? And he said, oh, that's so easy. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, tell parents to behave like grown-ups and tell them they need to have good friends. And I thought, wow. He said, I always appreciated that you had this couple and this couple and this couple as good friends because it reinforced what you were telling me. And it made me feel you weren't so crazy. But it's the same idea, to be around adults and to be around peers who reinforce good things. And they will take you in a very positive direction. We only have a few minutes, and I know that you talk about, I want to hear you talk about very practical tools and small shifts. And you talk about 2 or 3 micro shifts that parents can make to shift the tone in their home. What are those micro shifts?
I talk about a lot of different stuff. The most basic is collect before you direct, which is wording that I took from Dr. Neufeld, but it's not entirely original. It's just one of the most simple things you can ever do. We should never assume attachment. We should never assume, like I'm speaking to you on my MacBook Pro, and I have a little green light above that tells me the camera is working. Back in the days when you couldn't see yourself, like on Skype or whatever, that was important to know the camera was still working. I have a little plug on the left-hand side that has a little green light that tells me the power is plugged in. I could tell you a story another time about doing a presentation at a conference in front of almost 600 people, and my computer died in the middle of my presentation, and it was back in the day before the little green light. I didn't know it wasn't plugged into the wall. I was I'm still in therapy for it. Because at the time, I'm naturally
that's the humiliation and the growth of a public speaker. You just have to mess up a lot.
I'm naturally very introverted, so they had walked me into a room, my third talk in a row at I think it was a homeschooling conference, and I thought it was going to be 50 people, and they walked me into the ballroom, and it was 550 people. And then my right, and so I joke with parents, like, imagine that there's a little green light on your kid's forehead, and that your job is to get that on before you do anything else. And people with their spouses, as a couple counselor, I'm telling you, people just walk into the room and just tell their spouse what to do. And it never goes.
Yes.
And it doesn't go well with your children, because your children's instinct is not to listen to somebody if they're not connected. And that is a good instinct. It keeps them safe from strangers and from influence.
Right.
They're only supposed to listen to you if they're connected to you. So It's really important to do what they do all around the world culturally. Take a few moments, get the eyes, get the smile, get the nod. Do that with your spouse when you come home. Have a good hug before you do anything else and just, hey, how are you? Get on the same page. Couples are completely floored with how much change they can do when they focus on that. And so in my first session, when I talk to people, I tell them, I go back and forth with what my top 3 things would be sometimes, but I also tell people, get that consequences thing in shape. Like, I've never met a couple. Last time I counted, I've had like 2,300 clients for individual couples counseling, not webinars and public talks and conferences, like you and I talking, right? And I've never met a couple that had consequences going correctly. I have like a 20-minute video on YouTube. It was the first one that I shot in Japan when I was living there that people can go look at if they want a little bit more information. But they have to be linked to what the child did or didn't do. They have to be administered in a calm way.
Right.
They have to be not something that your child needs. Like, don't take away the bedtime story if they need that to downregulate and go to sleep. And follow through. If you're doing it fairly and you said you're going to do it, follow through. So consequences. And then the last one, I guess I would say from the third realm, which I don't know if I explicitly said earlier. First realm, attachment, get that in good shape. Second realm, environment and regulation, get that in good shape. But third realm is what we talked about at the beginning. Now you do have to have relationship friendly, developmentally safe ways to deal with behavior. And one of the main things is children build up frustration inside, just like we do. And if that builds up, they are either going to have a way to express it and get it out in a positive way that makes them adaptive and resilient, or they're going to blow and they're going to be aggressive. That is you, that is me, that is all of us, and that is your children. Does that make sense, Meg? So
absolutely.
Teaching the limits is recognizing when your child is getting there. They're poking, they're asking for cookies for dinner, and that's all I want. And you meet that energy with firm, clear boundaries, clear no, but with some empathy. So you're not just angry and whatever. Hey, I know you want a cookie, but no, you're not getting. I know you're going to throw a tantrum and you're going to yell. That's okay, but you're not getting a cookie. I love you, but no. And you know this. And when you learn to be very good at that and you shift from, I have to avoid my child's upset, or I don't want to be a bad parent, so I'm going to say no. And I don't want to be a dictator, or I don't want to be mean. You let go those narratives and you find that clear, firm, but loving way to engage with our child's frustrations. One of my main concerns as a parenting coach is the lack of adaptivity and resilience I see in kids, especially kids from well-to-do families, which a lot of the families I worked with are doing well. Not all of them are like rich, but a lot of the families I work with are doing well in life, and they're just not able to see like why I'm giving my kids everything. We're giving them everything. Why are they upset? Why are we having these problems? And a lot of it in those communities is not setting limits that are firm but loving. Those are the 3 main areas that I would have parents look at that I think can make the biggest difference.
So your book, The Calm and Connected Parent, an attachment first guide to raising resilient kids in the age of screens and AI. I think that's probably one of the longest titles I've seen, but it's important, and it's coming out in November of 2025. So is this primarily what you talk about? Because you have transformative parenting and you have you unpack a lot of this. Do you cover most of what we've been talking about today in your book, Calm and Connected Parent?
I've been told by friends and mostly by clients for over 2 decades, you should write a book. You should write a book. And my answer was always no. That's too much work. I'm too much of a perfectionist that it would probably take me 5 years and be 10,000 pages. I'm only exaggerating a little. I wanted to find a thing I felt like I had to say that I could say that I think could make a difference that was different than like my mentor's book, Dr. Neufeld, or the great works by friends like Kim John Payne, who dear friend who writes great things. Dr. Becky has some good stuff out there these days. I know she's everywhere, but I like a lot of her stuff. The book has a lot of practical what to do's. It does. But its main job is trying to help you be that parent that I'm talking about. Now, I know I can achieve that with my process because I've been doing it for 20 something years, but not everybody has the time or the money to do it, or not everybody. But I just find that people just reading things, the whack-a-mole solution to solution and pendulum stuff doesn't work. So I wanted to try to provide something that was really accessible, that was about becoming that calm and connected parent. And how do you actually do that? And how do you have that narrative that you and I have been talking about? So the to-dos are in there, or I don't think anyone would pick it up. And the to-dos are effective. I know they work. But the main point of the book is trying to be a guide to guide parents into a different narrative, into a way of being that hopefully the what to-dos flow a lot better. And so it has a lot of inner work and things to do at the end of each chapter. I even made a workbook to go along with it.
Well, it's like the secret that you and I know, that I will, sort of let out and tell parents that we were talking about before we came on, which is the hard truth that if you're struggling, or if your kid is having some struggles, and what you said today is behavior is our kids talking to us either about an unmet need or some frustration or whatever, and that the answer to your kids' behavior issues is you, then the onus is on you to do what you can to see change in your child. And that's why I love and that's why I love the title of your book, Calm and Connected Parent, because everybody wants to be calm, but they feel like they're not. And everybody wants to be connected to their kids, but they're frustrated that they aren't. And the beauty of your book is that if you get this right, you don't have to worry about your kid.
Yeah.
It's really about, if you can sort of look at yourself in the mirror, what did you come into parenting with? Kind of what's your preload? What are you struggling with that you may be dumping onto your kid? If you can get a lot of that squared away, you really don't have to worry about your child. And the thing that I love about your work is we've been talking about a lot of different things, but if you look at it all, it makes sense. I don't know if it's intuitive, but maybe it's intuitive. But
I find that it is. I really do. Over the years, I've had so many people come to me and say that. Like, I've had people come to me from different spiritual traditions, and I know Dr. Neufeld got this, and they go, you know what? This is really what they teach in my spiritual tradition. I'm like, well, I didn't know that, but great, because I find that we all do have an intuition in there about, just think about, what did you need? Did you need a parent that was writing you about your behavior, judging you for what you're doing, reacting to you?
Yeah.
Or did you need a calm, connected presence? And did you need a perfect parent, really? Or did you need somebody who was just trying and walking the right direction, and they knew what their role was, and if they made a mistake, they said, I messed up, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, really, ask yourself that. And that's what you needed. Be that,
Well, and exactly. And I'll often tell parents, think about yourself as a 15-year-old. If they bring in a 15-year-old to see me, and I say, think about what you needed as that kid. What you needed was pretty simple and straightforward. You didn't need a car when you were 16. You didn't need to be, in this program or that program. Parents that take their kids to soccer and gymnastics, it's great. However, 99% of it's way overdone, because I tell parents, you're spending all this time away from your kid, totally different topic. I'm doing what you do. We love what we do. And so we go off on bunny trails. But I said, you were sacrificing all this time with your kid to be in the car and go off and do this. And he's going to go to college and do none of this. He's not going to play soccer, not going to play professional football. It's over. And so why aren't you sacrificing your time with your kid in order to do that?
I find that's one of the biggest vicious cycles is parents will, for a long time, were parking their kids in front of TV as a babysitter. Like, I don't know what to do, so let's do this. And believe me, I've been there. Okay. When my kid was little and I was at work for a long time, his mom would sometimes put him in front of a documentary about birds, and he loved just watching, the birds, but she was just, I need a break for a minute, and but in a lot of times, my clientele a lot of times is enrichment. Let's have them in Mandarin class and then gymnastics and then volleyball. I was just talking to some parents yesterday that they're just constantly doing volleyball. Like, look, some of that is great. Some of that is great. But the thing is you're creating with screens and with all this, you're creating like a dopamine situation where kids need this level of, stimulation from social media, or it's boring, right?
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, look it up. Don't trust me. Don't trust Dr. Meeker. Go look up the importance of play, the importance of downtime.
Yes.
Every developmental scientist agree that free play and creative play is necessary for a child's development. And if they never have a chance for free, open, creative play because they're overscheduled and overthink, that it really is detrimental to their development. And like my dear friend who I mentioned before, Kim John Payne, his daughters are amazing, amazing young women now. They're in their 20s, but I would meet them sometimes. They actually stayed at my place in the summer when I went to Hawaii sometimes because he would come out to speak at some schools. And he famously, his daughters would come to him and go, "Dad, we're bored." And the answer was always like, "Oh." That's all he would do. He would just go, "Oh my." And they would go, and then 2 minutes later, what were they doing? They were playing. They
were finding something to do.
Something to do that was super creative. And hearing that early on as a dad was so important to me that I'm just telling you guys, not everybody can go to a school like my kid's school, which I consider like winning the lottery to go to this school and having the teacher my son had. But not everybody can do that or has that. But almost anybody can create little cohorts like you talked about of families that they do more natural things and they play. And I'm just telling you, the kids didn't care. They didn't care. At first we were like, and don't take this the wrong way, anybody, if your kid watches movies or whatever, but we just didn't show movies or anything to my kid like when he was growing up. And then we just kind of forgot about it. Like we just didn't think about it. And then he was 12 and we're like, oh, he hasn't seen a movie yet. We should go see a movie. And I'm just telling you, the kids don't actually care. They're just, if there's an attachment vacuum of not leadership and leading the way, and we're doing this because we know it's what's right for you, not what everybody else is doing. And if there's a vacuum of like being able to have downtime and stuff, they will fill it with screens. They will fill it with other things. But if you provide good leadership and you provide alternatives, your kids, you will see, will love it and they're fine with it,
And I really, really, really just want to reiterate that because parents have a hard time when they hear their kids say, "I'm just bored." Parents feel it's their responsibility to fill that boredom or find something to do, or they're a bad parent. Because I think that a lot of younger parents are taught, your kid needs to have something to do, exciting and stimulating all day long in order for them to develop well, and you need a good parent. But boredom is really the entryway into creative play.
Absolutely.
And you're absolutely right. But parents have a tough time with that boredom piece because they see their friends whose kids are running around more than they are, and they think, oh, see, they're not bored. They're not bored. I better step it up and do something. But we could go on and on. This has just been fabulous. My guest is Todd Sarner. He's a psychotherapist, a parenting coach, founder of transformative parenting. And he's the author of this great upcoming book, The Calm and Connected Parent. That's the short version of the book, but just go to Amazon or a bookstore and look up The Calm Connected Parent. Todd, if people want to know more about you or what you do, how can they get hold of you?
Best way is just our website, www.transformativeparenting.com. It has our socials on there. We've done Facebook for a while. I think there's 10,000 parents on there. I've never been a big social media guy, but we have more going on with Instagram. There's a masterclass for people who are interested in maybe working with us. There's a masterclass on the website that's just like 20 minutes, gives you a good introduction to our work. But yeah, transformativeparenting.com, and November 18th, 2025, the book comes out. I'm excited about it. I'm proud of it. And I think a lot of people will like it. We're actually also going to do a companion course to go along with it, just to kind of work through each chapter.
I love it. I love it. I would love to talk to you about the companion guide because, parents need that. I'm a reader and I love to read, but I read so much, sometimes I forget what I've read.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to solve.
So it's really nice when you have that, when you have a guide to go through and you write things down. I'm sure your book is going to do really well. I'm sure all of my listeners will love to read your book. And I just look forward to you coming out and seeing how it does. I think it's going to be great. And then we all get to listen to you on more podcasts.
Nice. And I hope we get a chance to talk again sometime. I've really enjoyed it.
I do too. Thank you so much, Todd, for joining us on Parenting Great Kids. Hey, parents, I'm Dr. Meg Meeker, and if you're ready for real solutions to your parenting problems from a pediatrician, join my Parenting Great Kids community today.
There's a reason so many parents trust Dr. Meg Meeker. Now her courses, parenting forum, and trusted answers are all in one place, the PGK Insider Community. Join free at meekerparenting.com.